Hi, I'm Adam Greenfitter. I'm the chair of the Caribbean Council here at the ULI Southeast Florida, and I'm with Nate Whigham, who's in Puerto Rico, and we're just checking in with Puerto Rico and seeing how everything's going. How's it going, Nate?
It's going good. Obviously we're in quarantine like a lot of other places, but to my understanding, the number of cases on the island is relatively low. So I think the island's weathering the storm. We're actually hearing talks now about potentially slowly reopening the island around the end of the month here. But most people here are working from home. A lot of the government agencies are also working remotely. In fact, I had to interact with Hacienda, who's the local taxation authority, the other day just through the internet for something, and it was actually taken care of pretty quickly.
So good to hear. So your story is very unique. I mean, you are not from Puerto Rico originally, and you came to Puerto Rico just a few years ago. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I first discovered Puerto Rico. Actually, I heard, I think it was Peter Schiff on a podcast maybe 3 years ago or even more, talking about some of the tax-related incentives here. Frankly, I didn't think much about it, but then my sister got married in Jamaica a little over 2 years ago. So me and my fiance, attended the wedding and wanted to keep traveling. Said, hey, let's go check out Puerto Rico. And this was 6 months after Maria. And we came, we spent about 5 days here, loved it. At least in San Juan, the metro area, there was seemingly very little effect even still at that time from the hurricane. And the island is wonderful. The people are wonderful. Food's fantastic. It's a beautiful island. And so that really made me think, okay, I should, really be looking into these tax incentives and seeing if it makes sense for our business. And so we did, and it seemed to make a lot of sense. And so I came back to the island a couple more times, went to an investment conference. I think that's actually where you and I met. And, just came away really sold on the island, not only from the tax perspective, but also just on the amount of opportunity here, from a real estate perspective and other types of economic opportunity as the island was rebuilding post-hurricane and doing a lot of things to come out of the recession that they had been in for some time. And so it really sold me. So, we straightened up our affairs to do the move and then came here last June, and we're coming up on a year now.
You're a ULI member. I guess you're initially were part of the Urban Land Institute in Los Angeles.
That's right. Yeah, I've been a member for quite some time.
Well, it's great to hear that, our conferences, our ULI conferences have actually resulted in individuals such as yourself taking action, and in this case, getting involved with Puerto Rico in the Act 2022. I believe that's the tax incentive that you utilize. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. It's been around for, I think it was in 2012 when they created it. And really, it was an incentive put in place to incentivize businesses to come to the island. And Act 20 pertains to the businesses, and Act 22 is for individuals. And there's a lot of detail on it, but ultimately, if you set up the structures appropriately and you're operating your business in Puerto Rico, but doing what they call exporting services, which really just means you're interacting with people that are not on the island, then the business pays a very, very low tax rate, and you as an individual have a tax exemption on dividends, distributions, and capital gains. So it's really, to my understanding, the lowest taxes that U.S. citizens would pay anywhere in the world, and that's really a direct result of Puerto Rico's very unique status as a territory of the U.S., but not currently a state.
And what's that range of taxes for individuals and corporations?
Yeah, well, the corporate tax is a maximum corporate tax rate of 4%. Now, if you have U.S. source income, you still have to pay your federal on that. But
yeah, I'm sorry because we 4%, had a little bit of interruption. 4%.
That's right. Yeah, and then they passed another law last year called Act 60, which consolidated all the incentives together. So now we just call it Act 60, but effectively it's the same.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know about that update on Act 60. And and what's been your experience? I mean, you're in the finance sector. What's been your experience? And if you can talk a little about what you do and doing it from Puerto Rico, what's that like?
Sure. Well, we're commercial real estate mortgage brokers / capital advisors. We do debt and equity placement on all property types, really all parts of the capital stack all over the country. I've been doing it since 2006, pushing $1 billion of capital placement over my career, and I've had my own shop for about 2.5 years now.
And are there any advantages or disadvantages being based in Puerto Rico besides the taxes for your company?
Yeah, well, for my firm, yes, just because we have an office in LA, associate that sits there, and obviously I'm here on more on the East Coast, so this kind of gives us more, I guess, bi-coastal national coverage. So being closer to New York and Miami, since I moved here, I've been spending a lot of time, pre-virus situation, of course, traveling to events and conferences in those markets, and being able to expand our network, just more deeply in those areas around capital sources and sponsors and other, actors in our industry. Mm.
And what do what are you looking at today in the capital markets, finance? Is there any activity going on?
There is. I mean, conventional banks are, for the most part, out of the business. They're doing anything. They're doing the PPP loans. They're backed by the federal government, and any kind of lender that was reliant on a secondary market to recycle their paper, whether that was CMBS or originating debt through recycling debt through a CLO, really isn't very active right now at all, just because those secondary markets really shut down a few weeks ago. So as a result of that, groups that are structurally designed to be balance sheet lenders, i.e. they originate loans, they hold it on their own balance sheet, they don't originate with the intention of offloading the paper, those guys are actually going gangbusters. So, while everyone else is on hold, they're reaching out to us and saying, hey, send us, we want to see every deal.
And just, yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. So what type of transactions are you working on right now?
Yeah, well, we're actually doing a lot of cannabis-related deals, which is interesting. We had a good amount of experience in that space. Last year, I'd say close to half of our, just number of deals that we closed were cannabis-related, and there's kind of a whole story around that. And these are just, senior loans on cannabis-related properties, generally leased to third parties. And because that industry is actually doing quite well, given everything that's going on, there's a lot of operators out there that are looking for additional cash flow and ways to monetize assets that are on the books, whether that's putting debt on real estate, monetizing receivables, doing sale leasebacks, potential equipment financing. So our deal submissions or requests that have come in on that front are really kind of through the roof. And then outside of that, we're seeing a lot of requests for bridge financing, and that goes back to what I mentioned, where the balance sheet lenders that are designed to hold paper are still really quite active. So a lot of things where if someone had a CMBS loan that was moving down the process, that lender obviously is on hold now. It's not a deal you're able to get done. You can go to one of these balance sheet lenders, and they can come and step in and let you close your transaction, refinance your existing debt, whatever the motivation for that particular piece of finance was. A lot of times they can come in and accommodate that. And then outside of that, we're having a lot of conversations with various investment groups around acquiring distressed paper. A lot of these lenders that I mentioned that aren't really structurally designed to hold a paper on their balance sheet for any length of time, and now they're really stuck with it. They're starting to be, really be very motivated to move that paper. Generally, it's some kind of a discount. The amount of discount, I think, really depends on, how far the economic distress goes as we get deeper and deeper into this environment. But there's a kind of a slew of investors that are out there that are ready, willing, and able, and very capable of acquiring that paper if the pricing and expectations lenders reaches a point where everyone's willing to transact. I think they can do that very quickly.
And in the Caribbean region and Puerto Rico, do you see any particular opportunities moving forward after we kind of get past the health part of the coronavirus?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking specifically about Puerto Rico, I think the biggest opportunity here is just really to bring back all of the pharmaceutical manufacturing and medically related manufacturing that was already here on the island. We're talking about, bringing these kinds of supply chains back into U.S. territory, so we're not so dependent on other, countries manufacturing our medications, our medical equipment, and everything associated with that. So, if we're looking to bring that back to the U.S., Puerto Rico is absolutely the natural fit for that.
And so for those that aren't aware, I mean, Puerto Rico has had a 50-year history of manufacturing almost every legal pharmaceutical drug that every American has consumed was made in Puerto Rico at one time. Baxter, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, the list goes on. So the infrastructure is there in place, and Puerto Rico has had a successful track record, has a great workforce. And the workforce is about 50% the cost of Mississippi, so it kind of seems like a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's really a no-brainer. I mean, today it's a $300 billion economy today, and 25% of that today is pharmaceutical-related manufacturing. And it used to be much larger than that in the past because of some of the tax incentives that were in place from the 70s really to the mid-2000s. So all that infrastructure exists. It's all here. Like you mentioned, you have a highly skilled workforce that already knows how to do this, is already familiar with that industry and has a lot of experience. And your cost of labor here might be half what it is in other states, but you've already got all the existing infrastructure. And we're actually talking to some potential real estate investors, both local to the island and not, that are saying, hey, if the pharmaceutical companies are willing to come back, we'll buy the real estate, we'll lease it to them. We'll do those deals tomorrow.
So for anybody that's out there in the pharmaceutical world, big shout out, reach out. The pharmaceutical plants are there, they're available, the workforce is there. Financing, I imagine, is going to be readily available for this type of industry.
Absolutely. If you're talking about those kinds of entities coming and the credit that they bring to the table, you're not going to have any challenge with getting those deals financed. And as I mentioned, if they don't want to deploy the capital required to acquire the real estate or build out the infrastructure, there is going to be a line of investors that are going to be willing to do that for them and just lease it back to them at very, very reasonable rates.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I think that today everybody's concerned about bringing manufacturing back to the United States and Puerto Rico. And it's, I think, an opportunity, for, helping build the Puerto Rican economy on one hand and, bringing, these really critical industries back to the U.S. and under the U.S. control. Well,
absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's kind of a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, great, Nate. I appreciate you taking some time to speak with me, and I know everybody at the Urban Land Institute, is looking for information and trying to get an idea of how, this terrible virus is affecting the region. Is there anything else about Puerto Rico that you think that we should know about? Any other last thoughts?
I do. Yeah. So in the context of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico is, I think, uniquely positioned to weather the storm really extremely well. And that's because even before this whole situation, tourism is only 7% of the island's GDP. And there's actually a lot of things that were put in place to help encourage development of that and build out that industry, all of which I think have great momentum and continue to do so. But if you think about the Caribbean region in general, that's generally very dependent upon the tourism industry. No one knows how long the situation is going to affect, hospitality occupancy and travel and all those related things. And PR, again, that's less than 10% of the entire economy here. So I think the island is well positioned to get through the short-term distress that's going to be related to that. And if good things happen, like bringing back this manufacturing related to medical and pharmaceutical, it's really going to come out of this situation, I think, very, very strong.
Well, that's great to hear. Stay safe, Nate, and best wishes to you and obviously the family, and look forward to speaking in the near future.
You too. Take care. Cheers.